What is up, Thrive? We are back with Mark chapter 5 today. Mark chapter 5, as always, hit pause, go read Mark chapter 5. It'll take you 2 minutes. Then come back and watch this sermon video. It's cool we were getting to double up this week, so you were probably just like sermoned out right now. You got 2 sermons this week. I don't even know what I'm saying right now. I have no idea. I need a nap. All right. Mark chapter 5. Hey, I remember, why did I start off like that? Can we cut this? Anyways, all right, we're just going for it. Do you remember your earliest memory? I know I do. My earliest memory, I think I was like 3 or 4. Like I was like young. And here's why I remember it. It was absolutely traumatic. So we were on a beach vacation with my parents and then some of their kids and all of that who were my friends and my age. I don't remember it perfectly. I would need to call my mom to get the real story, but here's what I remember. We were all in the pool and something happened. I don't know if we were playing a game. I think we were doing a train around the pool. You put your hands on your shoulders and walk around. Well, somehow I got forced underwater, and I got forced under the biggest kid there who was a few years older than me and a big kid. And so all of a sudden, 3-year-old little Evan is stuck underwater under this human who I don't think realizes it. And I'm realizing no one knows I'm under here. I can't get out. And I've been under here a while and I can't breathe. So I am freaking out. And so you got to remember, this is my earliest memory because I thought I'm going to die. And so all I can remember is being underwater and looking up. And I can remember kind of seeing everything vaguely through the water and just that fear. And thankfully my mom, I think it was my mom, figured it out and, obviously got them to stop and pulled me out of the water. And I'm alive today and sitting here in front of this camera. But it's freaky. That is a terrible feeling to feel absolutely helpless. You're small, you're little, nobody sees you. There's nothing you can do to help yourself. There's nothing you can do to get up. And you're just thinking, this is it. I'm done. And I was paralyzed with fear. That's why it stayed in my brain so long. And even though I was so young, it's locked in there. Because you really think here it is. I'm helpless and I'm going to die. It is game over. And I realized that for many of you watching right now in a much more serious way, maybe that's kind of what you feel like your life is right now. That you feel that whatever situation you're in, you're helpless. You're hopeless. That maybe you've tried everything and there's nothing that you feel that you can do to make it right. Man, maybe you've been hurt by somebody and there's a lot of unforgiveness. There's a lot of pain. Maybe there's a lot of self-consciousness that somebody important to you in your family or friend group or somebody at school commented on something about your personality or the way you look and you're just in pain right now. Maybe you're trapped in a certain sin or addiction or cycle that you don't want to be in and you just keep doing the same thing. Maybe you've got mental health issues, anxiety, depression, and maybe you're looking at it going, okay, I've tried everything. I've read the books, I've watched the videos, I've done the stuff. When is this going to end? And you're helpless. And you're starting to fear and you're worrying and you're going, okay, what if this is how it's always going to be? And there's so much just fear and anxiety and worry. And you're just going, when is this going to end? And maybe even you feel alone. Can I give you some good news? That if you're going through that today, you are the exact person that Jesus came to save and to help and to be with. That as we look at the Gospel of Mark, Jesus didn't go to the righteous, to those who had their lives together, to those who were okay. Jesus flocked to the broken, to the hurting, to the helpless, to the fearful, to those who needed a Savior. And right now, Jesus is with you. He's walking with you. He wants to deliver you and he wants to rescue you from your situation and from your fear. So just hold on. See, that's why today we're looking at Mark chapter 5. This entire chapter is a chapter devoted to Jesus stepping into broken situations and helping broken people. What we're going to do today is, because these situations are so interconnected and because we can learn so much from each situation, we're going to do a lot more summarizing and a lot less scripture reading, because this is like a decently big chapter. It would take us a lot to directly read, but we're going to summarize these scriptures and see what we can learn from it. So here's what I want us to do. Why don't we take a look at the three different stories and see what we can learn about the helplessness of their situations. Here's what I mean. It starts off with Jesus is on a ship. He lands and whatever. They're near like tombs there. And so this guy comes out, and he's a demon-possessed man. And so he shows up, and they can't keep him chained down. He cuts himself all the time. He's out of his mind. People have just kind of cast him off to live his life. Jesus shows up, and he confronts him. And the demons in him beg Jesus, like, don't hurt us. Like, why are you here? We know you're the Son of God. Jesus asked what their name is. They said, we are Legion. There were multiple demons in this man. This was a messed up situation. And when Jesus steps on the scene, what happens is they begin to beg really for their lives. They beg for Jesus not to torture them or send them out of the land. So Jesus sends them into pigs. And so he sends them into the pigs, and then the pigs all run off, and they run off the cliff. So first man right here is a helpless demon-possessed man. But then we move on to the next story. A ruler of the synagogue, a prominent man named Jairus. He approaches Jesus and he says, Jesus, my daughter is at home sick. I'm afraid she's going to die. Please get to my house fast enough so that you can go and you can heal her. I mean, this man is worried that his daughter is going to die. And can I kind of let you in? She eventually does die. Jesus doesn't get there in time. And so now he's hanging out with Jesus, and he's not just worried that his daughter is going to die. He's now mourning at his own daughter's death. But as Jesus is on the way to help Jairus, he runs into a woman. So there's crowds all around. But we hear the story of a certain woman who goes crawling through the crowd. She has an issue of blood. She had been bleeding, I think, for something like 12 years, something like that. And she couldn't stop the bleeding. The scriptures actually tell us that she had seen every single physician, done every single thing that she could, and nothing worked, to the point where she actually spent all of her money. I mean, she was on her last leg. It was a dark, broken, and hopeless situation. It was a terrible, terrible thing. But the good news is this. I'll just go and spoil all of the stories. She crawls and she touches Jesus' garment, and immediately power flows through him, and he heals her, and immediately she was fine. Not only that, they get news that Jairus' daughter has died. Jesus shows up to his house, kicks all of the mourners out, just brings the family and a few of his disciples in, and he tells the girl, I say to you, arise. And she gets up from the dead. So we've got three situations that thankfully end good, but they begin with absolute hopelessness. A demon-possessed man with a legion of demons cannot set himself free. A man with a dead daughter cannot raise her to life. A woman who's done everything she could cannot fix her situation. She is in a broken, terrible, awful space, and it's sad. I mean, it is just messed up, that feeling like there's nothing that I can do. Man, I don't know if you've ever heard of night terrors. Thankfully, I've never had one, but I've heard of them. I went to school in high school with a girl who had them. Apparently, there are things called night terrors. I'm not kidding. Where you wake up in the middle of the night and you are paralyzed. This is not a joke. Go Google it. You're paralyzed. So you're laying there like this. I don't know if y'all could see that. You're laying there like this, and you can't move. And a lot of people report that they begin to see like monsters, like demon-like creatures, like creepy stuff happen in front of them, and there's nothing that they can do about it. A feeling of utter helplessness. I don't know about y'all, but I don't want anything to do with that. Man, that's how these people felt in this moment, and maybe that's how you feel right now. Man, your parents just got a divorce. They just sat down and told you your world is just broken and messed up right now. You're planning, where am I going to live? What are the things that I'm going to do? Are they going to be mad at each other all of the time? How are we going to do holidays? Like, everything is racing through your brain, and the family structure that you had is just blown up, and you're like, Lord, what is happening right now? Maybe you're bound in some kind of sin. You're bound in bitterness. You're bound in unforgiveness because a friend stabbed you in the back. You're bound in maybe of an addictive sin like pornography. Maybe you've gotten into drugs, drinking, alcohol, the whole thing, and you really can't stop. Maybe it's a more inward focused thing. Maybe you recognize you're prideful. You're selfish. Maybe you just know you're mean. People have told you. And so you live your life in this sinful manner, and the Spirit has convicted you, and you don't want to do it, but you just feel so trapped, and you're ready to be broken free, but you don't know what to do. Maybe you're trapped in anxiety and depression, that you have those days where you just feel like you can't even get out of bed, and people don't understand, and you've tried to tell your parents, you've tried to explain it to your friends, you're scared to see a doctor, you don't want people to think you're weird, and you're just sitting there going, oh my gosh, will this ever get better? You feel like the woman with the issue of blood. I've tried everything. What am I going to do? Can I give you some good news? It's you and your situation that Jesus is here for. That Jesus didn't show up and shake hands with the Pharisees. Jesus didn't show up and just find all the people with no issues and hang out with them and joke and laugh. Jesus walked into helpless, broken situations and did what only the Son of God can do. And right now, Jesus is in your situation. He is in your midst. He hasn't forgotten about you. He hasn't left you. He hasn't ignored you. He is always right on time. He is here for you, and breakthrough is here. And can I give you encouragement? Your breakthrough, your help, your deliverance is on the way. I don't know what it's going to look like. It may not look like what you want it to look like, but it's coming. Jesus knows what's best for you. And so we can have hope that Jesus is going to step into your situation and heal you of depression or anxiety, or make a way for you to have that conversation and help your parents to understand what you're going through and to help you see a doctor and get the help that you need. Man, maybe God is ready to step into your parents' broken marriage and fix it. Or maybe God is just ready to heal your heart and help you to cope with it and trust Him through it. Maybe God is ready to step in and break you free of that sin, that addiction, that attitude, that unforgiveness, whatever it is, and to just make amends with the person or get rid of that bitterness and that bitter feeling. Like, Jesus has not forgotten you, but He's with you, and all He has to do is say the word, like He spoke to the dead little girl. All you have to do is touch the hem of His garment, barely come in contact with Him, and His power is sufficient to set you free. Have hope today. Have hope in who Jesus is. He's with you. But man, how do we access that deliverance? How do we access that freedom? There's a consistent theme in this chapter, and it's faith. Obviously, the demoniac, he couldn't have faith beforehand. He was out of his mind, but he had faith afterwards, and he continued to walk in his freedom because of that faith. You know, he walked up to Jesus and said, "Can I follow you?" Like, he was ready to go. I don't even know who you are, but you set me free. I'll follow you anywhere. But Jesus actually told him, no, go and tell the world. And so he did. He went and told in 10 different cities, preached the gospel, really. When we look at the woman with the issue of blood, Jesus heals her and then asks, who touched me? I felt power go out from me. And when she presented herself, he says, "Daughter, your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease." Your faith has made you well. I mean, she's literally crawling on the ground to get to Jesus. He looks at Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue, as they're walking to go raise his dead daughter from the dead. He says, "Do not fear, only believe." That there's this consistent theme here of Jesus telling us that access to His power happens through faith, through believing, through trusting in Him. But I think for a lot of us right now, our problem is that we're overcome by fear. Man, when you walk in darkness and brokenness and sin and struggle and pain for long enough, you begin to develop that fear that says, will it always be this way, or will Jesus come through? Will it always be this way, or will I ever be delivered? Will it always be this way, or will I ever get relief from my suffering, from my brokenness, from my pain? Man, you can guarantee the times where the demoniac had a right mind, where the demons let up on him. He's sitting there thinking, is this going to be my life forever? That the woman, after spending all of her money, was going, will I just be sick and eventually die like this? That Jairus on that walk is going, will I ever talk and speak to my daughter again? And so often we get trapped and we get paralyzed in fear that it will always be this way. But access to God's deliverance and power is through faith. Faith is the very opposite of fear. Actually, I'll say this. Faith and fear are really the same things. They're trust. They're just trust in two different things. See, fear is simply faith that the worst will happen. Fear is simply faith that the disease is too strong, that the sin has too strong of a hold on me, that I'll always be in pain, that I'll always be depressed, that I'll always be anxious. It's simply trusting in the power of whatever has us bound. You know what faith is? Faith is simply faith in a God who is stronger than all of that, a God who literally cannot be stopped, who literally has never lost a battle and never will. And the good news is that faith actually begins to drive out fear. Because fear is faith in the things of this world. Faith is faith in the God who can't be stopped, can't be defeated, possesses all power, and is actually for you. Faith begins to drive out fear wherever it shows up. And so I want to encourage you, place your faith in God today. Don't place your faith in doctors because doctors fail you. I'm not saying don't go to doctors, but ultimately our faith is in God, right? Don't place faith in yourself because you already know you screw up enough stuff. Don't just place faith in the things of this world, and do not place faith in the things that have you bound. Ultimately, when we direct our faith and our trust to the God of the universe, faith has to leave, because it doesn't matter how strong or how powerful the thing is in your life. Nothing is stronger than God. But here's the cool thing, is that faith drives out fear. But we can be honest with ourselves and say, hey, we don't have to have perfect faith. I mean, maybe right now you're worried that God's calling you to faith, but there's still a little bit of fear in your heart. Maybe you're like, hey, I trust God, but I'm still freaking out. Hey, I trust who He is, but I'm just not so sure. Listen to me. That's okay. You're going to start out that way. You don't think that the people in this story weren't afraid? I can guarantee you that the demoniac, was freaking out every time he came to, full of fear. Man, you can guarantee that the woman with the issue of blood was afraid. The story actually tells us when Jesus asked, who did I just heal? Who just touched me? Who just touched me? She confronts him with fear and trembling. See, a woman in that day with an issue of blood, with a discharge of blood, would be ceremonially unclean under Jewish law, which means she was not supposed to touch Jesus or anybody else in that crowd, but she was so desperate that she did it anyways. And so she's worried that Jesus will condemn her, have her, just have her, punished, whatever, yell at her, whatever it would be because of what she had done wrong. She was terrified. You can guarantee that Jairus was freaking out and was fearful because Jesus says, don't fear. He knew. I mean, the man just lost his daughter. And so there was a mixture of faith and fear in the woman. She's so faith-filled that she's crawling. She just needs to touch Jesus. And Jesus says, your faith has made you well. Jairus continues to walk with Jesus. He just watched him heal the woman. Crowds are gathering around him. He has reason to believe, but he's full of fear. What if I'll never see my daughter again? What if I'll never talk to her again? Of course there's going to be a mixture. But here's the good news, is that faith grows. And as faith grows, fear diminishes. So have whatever you have right now. Start with the faith you've got right now. It's good enough for God. But the good news is that the little faith you have right now will grow a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger as God is faithful to you. When you put your faith in God, the faithful God always shows up and works for your good. And as God is continually faithful in your life, then your faith in Him begins to grow. And as your faith in God begins to grow, your fear of the world begins to diminish. And as you live your life as a Christian, where faith maybe dominates your heart and there's just a little bit of fear, eventually you will look at the world and go, I'm not scared of you. My God has done so much in my life. There's no reason to worry about you. Faith always grows and it drives out fear. Start with what you've got and be thankful that your faith right now will drive out fear and your faith in the future will drive out that fear too. It's kind of like when you go ride a roller coaster for the first time, you're mixed with a whole lot of fear and faith, right? You're like, hey, these are pretty sturdy. I just watched several people go ahead of me in line and no one died there. Most likely I'm going to be fine. Statistically, it's going to be all right. But at the same time, you're like, what if I'm that guy? What if I just get decapitated or whatever? What if I go flying off, into Atlanta or Charlotte or wherever you're at and I'm dead, right? But then you ride it. You ride one ride, two rides, three rides, and you realize, all right, this is safe. This is all right. And now you have way more faith in the ride than you do the fear, and you can actually begin to enjoy it. That's exactly what the Christian life is like. As God is faithful in your situation, your faith will grow and your fear will diminish. And finally, we have a responsibility that when God is ultimately faithful in our situations, in response to our faith, we need to tell the world. See, the man, the demoniac, the former demoniac, he asked Jesus, he says, Jesus, can I follow you? And Jesus says, no. But then he says this, go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how He has had mercy on you. And he went away and began to proclaim in the Decapolis, that's 10 cities, how much Jesus had done for him, and everyone marveled. Think about that. This man went out and preached the gospel, and everyone marveled. Everyone believed it. They were shocked. He went out into 10 different cities preaching the gospel of Jesus with effectiveness. Do you want to know why? Because he had a story, a good one. I mean, this man was trapped in sin, had several demons living in him, was basically given a death sentence to live in the tombs until the day that he died. But he could announce to the world, I was bound in sin, but this man Jesus set me free. Come and know him too. I think far too often we look at our situations full of fear and we ask ourselves, why me? We ask God, why me? Why are you letting this happen to me? Why am I doing this? What is going on? Is this punishment? Is this because you hate me? Because you have abandoned me? Because you're not faithful? Maybe the reason God has allowed you to go through this is so He can demonstrate His faithfulness and then use your story to change the world. That maybe what you're worried about is simply a setup for God to show up and then disperse His grace throughout the world and see many more people saved and encouraged and faith-filled because of what He's brought you through. Maybe God has a grander plan for your situation than you could ever believe. So we have an opportunity. When Jesus shows up, tell your story. In fact, everyone who's a Christian, you've already got a story. You don't even have to wait. I mean, go to school, tell your story of how you got saved. When you're around your friends, tell your story. Around unsafe family members, tell your story. Hop on Instagram and Facebook and whatever else, tell your story. Tell the world of what Jesus has done for you. You don't need a structured sermon. You don't need a 3-point sermon. You don't need a video or whatever. Just tell the world a simple story of how Jesus changed your life. And I guarantee, just like the Decapolis, there will be people who look at it and marvel at who this Jesus is and say, if he did that for you, he can do it for me too. Tell your story. I think it's so cool that when we look at this chapter and we look at the sayings of Jesus, Jesus is actually speaking to you and I today. That in fact, when we take what Jesus said to the little girl as she was dead laying there, what he told the woman with the issue of blood, and when he spoke to the demoniac, the former demoniac at this point, it actually formed a coherent sentence of what Jesus is speaking to you and I, to his church today. This is what Jesus is saying to us. I say to you, arise. Your faith has made you well. Go in peace and be healed of your disease. Go home to your friends and tell them how much the Lord has done for you and how he has had mercy on you. Arise out of the deadness of sin. It's your faith in him that has made you well. Go in peace with God. You're a child of God now. And be healed of your disease, mainly the disease of sin. Go home and tell the world of how much the Lord's done for you and how he has had mercy on you. How he saved you and delivered you and been there for you time and time again. Wherever you're at, God's with you. He's more powerful than anything you're facing. Have faith in him. And let's tell the world. God, would you strengthen us to walk in your power, to have faith in you, to trust you no matter what? Would you begin meeting needs for whoever is watching right now? Display your power, your benevolence, your love. And God, would you give us the grace and the courage and the boldness to tell our story to this whole world that they might know you. It's in Jesus' name I pray. Amen. That was for the cover photo. All right, we good. No!